RCSI looks at passing in terms of you need to pass every module, and then you need to pass the year in general. With your GPA needs to be above a 2. Dublin, the good thing about it is it's a very small city, so there's a lot of walking, there's a lot of nature, and another thing is RCSI has a lot of different clubs and societies that you're bound to find something that you're interested in.
Hello, Geetika. Welcome to the Future Doctor podcast show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me here.
Pleasure. I'm really excited and looking forward to speaking with you today.
Thank you so much.
Right. So before we start, I want to give you a brief idea about the Future Doctor podcast show. So this show is intended for high school students and their parents, and we want to give them practical information from senior students of the universities, from the professors of the universities, and even from the deans of the universities as to how they can prepare in the best possible way to get into a medical school, and not only get into a medical school, but also how they can succeed as a medical student.
Okay.
Right. So you've been there, you've done that, you're still in your medical school journey. So I'm sure the high school students and their parents can learn a lot from you.
Yes. Thank you so much. It's such an honor to be here.
Pleasure. So let's get started. So to begin with, I want to know a little bit about your high school journey. So if you can tell the audience about your background, which school you come from, where did you grow up, and so that they can relate with it as well.
Right. So I've grown up in Dubai my entire life. And for most of my high school years, I first went to GEMS Wellington International School, where I did my IGCSEs. And then in my last 2 years, I did the IB diploma program in Dubai International Academy in Emirates Hills.
Fantastic.
So I studied biology, chemistry, and psychology at higher level, and then maths, English, and French at standard level.
Fantastic. So you are the typical Dubai girl born brought up here?
Yes, my entire life.
Fantastic. Okay, amazing. You mentioned that you did IGCSEs before and then you moved to IB. Any particular reason to make that switch to IB?
I had even the previous school that I was in completed the IB diploma program as well in the last 2 years, but I had heard a lot about how good DIA was for its IB diploma program, and the results that students were getting, even the career counseling team I had heard a lot about in Dubai International Academy, so that's what forced me to move to DIA.
Indeed, DIA is a great school for IB and one of the popular schools in UAE. Fantastic. Can you tell some factors that you noticed are different in IB, as compared to the British curriculum GCSEs? What were the things, different in terms of exams or just how they teach students?
I think what I noticed was that they were a lot more focused on choosing a smaller array of subjects, but then they really fine-tuned your skills in those subjects in the British curriculum.
Right.
Versus in IB, I found it to be a very holistic approach towards learning, where you were forced to take one language, you were forced to still do English and maths. But I thought that was a really good thing because it kind of kept you a very well-rounded individual towards the end of it, which was what I appreciated about the IB versus the British curriculum.
Right. So typically A-level students, they might end up taking 3 A-level subjects, which are, pretty focused towards what they want to take up in the university. Whereas in IB, you end up taking 6 subjects, and that sort of prepares you overall, and give you exposure to not only the focus subjects, but other subjects that you want to experiment with or something that you like.
Yes. For me specifically, before I came into my IB years as well, I wasn't 100% sure about what career I wanted to get involved with. And I also had a really, really strong interest for psychology. So that's why I took biology, chemistry, and psychology as my 3 higher levels. I was also a really big fan of mathematics my entire life, like from when I was a really small girl. So I still wanted to keep doing maths. But if I was to choose to stick with the British curriculum, then I would have had to pick between my favorite subjects. And then I just thought it would be easier to go through with IB, do everything that I still like doing, and then decide later on what I want to focus on.
Fantastic. Typically, I see that students who want to take up medicine, they sort of run away from maths and physics. But this is rare to see that you liked core sciences as well as mathematics. So that's fantastic.
Yes, I actually loved maths and I wanted to take maths at higher level. But something that one of my teachers told me very, very early on was that if you really do enjoy a certain subject in IB, but it's not related to medicine, then she told me to take it at a standard level so that I would still be able to do it. I'd still be able to enjoy doing it and potentially get a good grade in it because I did it at a standard level. But then I could still focus on my main subjects that focused on my career.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And what was the reasoning behind taking psychology as your HL along with bio and chem?
Psychology falls underneath a humanities subject, and I thought that it would just be a nice thing because I was still interested in it, and it was something that I would also was considering to pursue as a career because when I came into IB, I didn't specifically know that I wanted to do medicine.
Right.
So I was interested in it. I enjoyed it. I did it for my IGCSEs as well, and I really, really liked it. So I thought that it would just open up more career doors for me at the time.
Right. I wanted to ask you actually, like, of course, you're now doing medicine, but at that point of time when you were doing your IB diploma, what were the other career options that you were looking into or university majors that you were looking into?
So when I joined IB, I started to fall in love with biology and chemistry more specifically as subjects.
Right.
So I knew that I wanted to focus on a career related to the field of sciences. So I explored, I think it was biomedical sciences, biomedical engineering, even life sciences in North America. But then I got an opportunity for over my winter break to shadow my pediatrician, who I've been visiting since I was small, but I spent 2 weeks just following him around, seeing what he was doing. It was also that was during peak COVID time. It was in 2020. So there was just a lot of children who would come in to get vaccinations or even just flu vaccines. But I just fell in love with the way that the doctors would interact with their patients, and I thought that shadowing opportunity really made me fall in love with medicine as a career. So much that I was crazy about pediatrics as well as a future specialty for a very long time. But that's what made me like narrow down to medicine.
Right. So that was like the first spark, that sort of validated for you, okay, this is something I should do or take it up, right?
Yes.
So what was specific within that shadowing that really, attracted you? Was it like, okay, that ability to help people, or was it that curiosity for science, like, okay, this problem at the superficial level looks like this, but down deep there might be some other diagnosis. What exactly, made you attracted towards taking up medicine?
I think it was like you first mentioned, just seeing a child's face light up when you help them alleviate from what's been stressing them. So a lot of them would come to do with, there would be babies who would come, who would be crying and crying because of some kind of trouble that they were facing, or their parents would be stressed. But then just to see the parents' stress get relieved and even the baby to stop crying, it was these small things where it made me realize that as a doctor, you could really make a difference in someone's life.
Right.
Even though it may just be a small interaction for you, it really had a big impact on their day. So that was it was like a sudden light bulb moment in my head.
Right.
Yeah.
And how did you eliminate other options like biomedical engineering, biomedical science? How tough was it to let go those options?
While I was always interested in the theory aspect of those subjects, I realized that after my shadowing experience, it was that whole patient interaction aspect that those subjects lacked that really made me stick to medicine as opposed to those.
Right.
Subjects.
So you wanted something application based, right?
Yes.
Like you can apply sciences into real world
Yes.
problems. Amazing. So moving forward, you were sure that you wanted to take up medicine. So tell us about your university admission journey. So to begin with, what all destinations you were looking into, what countries you were looking into initially for medicine?
Right. So I was told that North America would be completely out of the question for me for medicine, specifically because I'm an Indian passport holder. So Canada was a no-go. Plus, you would have to do 4 years of your pre-med before you actually pursue your undergrad studies. So that's why the countries that I focused on were Europe. So it was mainly the UK, Ireland, and then I explored the Netherlands as well as another option
right.
for me. But it was mainly just universities around Europe.
Okay, so one is the duration issue in US and Canada. It takes longer.
Yes.
You also mentioned something about the nationality that you were Indian. Can you elaborate that? What was the issue?
I was told that, especially for Canada, for non-Canadian passport holders, it was a very, very competitive pathway.
Right.
And it's already competitive enough for the Canadian local students. But as a non-Canadian passport holder, I was told that I basically had no chance. So then that's what made me focus
The competition is intense. And in US and Canada, they're looking for diversity in the classroom, and typically Asian applicants are huge in numbers.
Yes.
So they have to choose very limited number of them. So that's perfect. Can you talk us through the application process predominantly for the UK and Ireland, how different they are or how similar they are?
Right. So they're actually very different. So for the UK, I had to take the UCAT, which was the test that I sat in the summer between grade 11 and grade 12.
Right.
So between my two IB years. That was probably one of the worst memories of my life that I have. Not that summer, but just I found the UCAT to be an extremely stressful exam to sit through. And there was just a lot of pressure that was put on me and my friends who were also planning to pursue medicine.
Right.
We would prepare for it together, but it was a very, very stressful exam to take. What I liked about Ireland was that it was purely focused on my academics. And that was something that thankfully I was able to keep a lot more in control. So because it was purely focused on my academics and then an interview with the college, that was a lot easier to go through compared to the UK.
Right. So UK had the UCAT exam, whereas Ireland didn't have any exam. They focused more on your overall profile.
Yes.
Right. Amazing. In terms of the selection process, so now you are in RCSI, so let's talk about that. So could you talk about the RCSI selection process, what all steps you went through?
Right. So, sorry, are you saying in terms of selecting RCSI as a uni for me or in terms of what I did as an applicant?
So what was the selection process by RCSI for applicants?
Okay. So I sent in an application form. I think it was in December or not December. I think it was in January, just after my winter break.
Okay.
I sent in an application form where they just asked me questions like what made me pursue medicine as a career, why RCSI, things like that. I sent in the application form, and then a few weeks later, I heard back from them saying that I was called for an interview.
Right.
And then a few weeks after that, I had an interview with the dean of RCSI. And it was a very relaxed interview, just asked me some questions about myself. He got to know me, I got to know him.
Was it just one-to-one or was it like
just
panel?
one-to-one. It was just me and him for, I think it was a long interview as well, for an hour. We just sat, had a good conversation. And a few weeks after that, I heard back from them with the good news that I was accepted.
Amazing. So. I'm sure it must be like a
yes.
very exciting moment.
It was such a nice memory of mine.
Can you talk a little bit more about the RCSI interview, what they asked, and how did you respond? Any mistakes that you made that you probably now wanted to fix in hindsight? And what were the things you did well, you think, that made you succeed in the interview?
Right. It was casual. I won't say very casual, but it was just a conversation. So he asked me a lot of questions about myself as well, like my hobbies, how I grew up in Dubai, and how I felt like growing up in Dubai had an impact on my personality, my interests. It wasn't what I found about that interview different from other medical interviews that I had taken for the different unis in the UK, was that it was very, very focused on just getting to know me as a person, and then I was able to ask him questions about RCSI as well. It was very personal. But he still asked me questions about what specialty I was very interested in. And then, again, why medicine? That's a big question that I was asked across all of my interviews. And then finally, I think that what helped me with that interview or what helped me succeed getting into RCSI was that I pre-planned questions that I wanted to ask him during the interview.
Right, that's very smart.
Because every interview ends with the question, standard question. Oh, do you have any questions that you want to
Right.
ask us? And I pre-planned some questions specifically for RCSI. So I did my research and then I pre-planned questions that I had that I thought were unique enough, and that's what I think helped me.
Yeah, that's
score
very
my
smart
place.
that you went well prepared, because that shows to the university that you are seriously, considering them as an option, right? Because
Yes.
universities also want to attract, talented students and motivated students. So that's a helpful tip. So you eventually heard back from RCS saying that you are admitted. So what were your emotions like? What was your family's reaction?
I think all of us were so happy. I remember both of my parents were they were out of the country, but we were like, I immediately just picked up my phone, I video called them, and
Right.
it's one of those core memories in your head that's still there,
Right.
because I was so excited sitting in my room. They were in Serbia, I think, and it was raining, and like they expressed that it was like the perfect scene for them as well. They got the good news. It was just a very nice, happy memory for all
Amazing.
of
Yes,
us.
indeed, it's a core memory for which you'll never forget, definitely. You got the offer, but then getting offer is one thing, and then deciding to go ahead with it is another thing. So how did you eventually decide, yes, I want to go ahead with RCSI? What were the things you researched about the university? How did you eventually decide upon it?
From my previous research on all other medical schools in Ireland, RCSI stood out to me. It was way better for me, I thought, compared to everything else, because of the amount of emphasis that RCSI places on medical research. And I spoke to a few doctors that were my parents' friends, or just connections that I knew who were doctors, and they told me that the biggest thing on making you stand out in the future as when you're applying for your master's or when you're looking for residency is how many research papers you have published. And I saw that RCSI put a very, very strong emphasis on research, so much so that they make it mandatory. It's integrated into your course as well, to where they give you 6 weeks to work on a research paper with a professor in RCSI, so that every student has at least one publication at the end of it. And that was something that really made RCSI stand out to me compared to other medical schools.
Very interesting. And did you have research interests prior, during your IB diploma?
Yes, so another good thing about the IB is that it really focuses on enhancing your research skills, because we do this, we write a small paper for every single subject that we take called an IA, an internal assessment, which is basically like a smaller research paper. And then you also have your extended essay, which
Right.
I would say it's a 3,000 word essay that you write focusing on one subject and one topic that you're interested in. So I think that those skills that I got from the IB, now when I think about the research that I've done, I used a lot of those skills.
Right.
So I found that very helpful.
And may I know which topic you chose for your research for IB, for the extended essay?
Yes, so I did it in the subject of biology, and I specifically focused on nutritional medicine. So I did it on comparing different types of plant-based milk and which one of them had the highest level of protein and the best fat solubility. So in terms of just the healthiest plant-based milk option for people who are lactose intolerant.
Very interesting. And did you reflect upon that in your personal statement?
Yes, I talked about that a lot in my personal statement. Again, because I knew that RCSI put such a big emphasis on research, medical research. So I talked about how I had gained experience working in the lab as well, because even in my extended essay, to test the protein uptake and to test the lipid digestion, I worked a lot in the chemistry lab and the biology lab to test these different techniques. So I talked about the different lab techniques that I learned
Right.
my personal statement.
And this is a very interesting point that you made. I think for students who are thinking to apply to med schools, it's very important to know what the university specializes in, right? And what they are expecting from the student. And if you sort of reflect that in your interview or in your personal statement, that I am a good fit. Like in this case, you talked about the research. So you also had certain research interests, and RCSI is also research intensive university.
Yes.
So you see there's a match, right?
Yes,
So this is a very interesting point. So thanks for sharing that.
of course.
Now, looking at the situation overall, right? If you reflect back, how can a high school student set themselves up to be in the best position to get into a medical school, assuming that they have good grades in school? Like that is that is a basic assumption that you're already doing good in school. But then how do you stand out amongst the applicants? Because everybody has good grades who's applying to med school. So how someone should prepare in the best possible way?
That's a great question. I think the number one thing you can do is gain as much on-site experience in a clinic or in a hospital. So just shadowing any kind of doctor. For me, that was very difficult actually, or for the applicants in my time, because it was during COVID. So they weren't letting students into clinics and hospitals. But now I know that they are a lot more open with that.
Yes.
So just gaining experience with following any doctors, maybe pick a specialty you're interested in, but I think it's still too early to know that as well.
Right.
Aside from that, I think just doing different extracurriculars to build your application. So one thing that I did is I found this first aid training course where you spent 2 days just going through all the different procedures to learn basic first aid, and then you become a licensed first aider.
Okay.
And that was something I talked about in my application as well, that I was a government certified first aider. So that was another interesting thing that I did. Aside from that, just fine tune on your extracurriculars, your hobbies, shadowing. It's too early to get research, but if you can find a way to get into a lab, then that's even better.
Right. So focus on the extracurriculars, try to do shadowing or internships wherever possible,
Yes.
right? And also, can they do self-research on themselves and publish or write blogs or something? Is that helpful?
Yes, I think just a lot of medical schools, they look out for ways that you work around just like your writing skills, because like I said, a lot of medical schools do put a lot of emphasis on your research abilities. So just showing that you have experience, or you've tried to gain experience in learning how to become a better writer, or you've just done a course on looking at literature reviews, things like that.
Right.
Is online courses, even volunteering work is something that makes you stand out a lot.
Okay.
Yes.
And a lot of students think that they have to do shadowing or internships or sort of extracurriculars only in medical field. But that's not true, right? They can probably a good sports person. They could be a musician. That also adds value in your application, right?
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
For me specifically, I grew up taking part in performing arts and theater.
Okay.
And I also believe that it's a lot better to stick to one big hobby that you have and really fine-tune that hobby to a very high level, as opposed to having a lot of surface level different hobbies. So, and I made sure to talk about my love for performing arts and theater. In my interview, I remember talking to the dean about wanting to contribute to their drama society and ways in which I could help out with that, just to make me look more alive to them. I don't want any applicant to also seem as like a person who's only interested in medicine. You need to have some kind of personality to you as well.
And did you discuss this aspect in your interview?
Yes, I did. I talked to them about contributing to the drama society.
There you go, right? That's something university is looking for. What you'll do beyond your studies,
Yes.
right? How can you contribute to the university? That's perfect. Okay, now let's talk about RCSI and your life at the university. Can you talk about the first week or the first month at RCSI? What all happened there?
Right. It was, if I had to describe it once, they call it the Freshers Fortnight. So the first 2 weeks in RCSI, it is the best time any student can ever have, because the RCSI has a student union where they have so many different clubs and society, and each club and society, they pick a specific day of the Freshers Fortnight to organize some kind of event. And it's to do with medicine, but also to do with like some kind of recreational activity. And it was so much fun. You get to know so many of your friends. It's such a thrilling experience because you're in a new environment.
Absolutely,
you're meeting so many new people, and everyone is open and friendly because everyone's doing this for the first time, or most of them are doing it for the first time.
Absolutely, yeah.
So it was just the best time.
Right. And somebody, for example, who is shy, right, who's not a social person, but study-wise, somehow they got into the medical school because of excellent grades. What advice you would have for them who are, say, typical geeks? How can they just sort of have a smooth landing in the first week or month? What advice you would have for them?
I think it's something that you can understand is that everyone sort of feels nervous because everyone is coming from high school. Everyone is doing it for the first time together. And everyone is very, very friendly. But I think also getting involved with clubs and societies, it kind of pushes you to talk to new people, because if you go to a specific event, say, for example, that the football society or the football club is hosting, then you know that there'll be other people who share similar interests to you, because they're all interested in football. They're at the same activity together. So then you can bond over your similar interests that you may have.
Right. And how did you make new friends in the university? Are they your classmates, or they are your activity mates? Like, who are your closest friends, and how did you meet them?
One thing about RCSI that makes it also very different from other universities, it's only focused on the healthcare sciences.
Right.
So the only subjects that they teach are medicine, physiotherapy, and pharmacy. So most of the people it was very small, I got to know everyone pretty quickly. Another good thing that I liked about it was that in my first year, all first year students get put into the same dorm areas together.
Okay.
So I was living with 3 other girls who they were all medicine students, and they ended up becoming my sisters throughout the entire year. But I was surrounded by medical students who were all there for the first time. So it was very easy to make friends that way.
And where are they from, like your roommates?
My roommates, all 3 of them were from different places. So one was from Jordan, one was from Trinidad and Tobago, and then one was from Malaysia.
That's amazing. Can you talk about that? Like, typically parents think, okay, you're, say, from India, you should live with, say, Indian roommates so that your eating habits are same and a little bit cultural fit is there. But I think there is a lot of advantage, by staying with someone who is from, say, different nationality and different culture. Can you talk about that, and what have you learned from that?
It was a very interesting experience for me as well, because I think even coming from Dubai, you're so used to being around Desi people quite a lot. But I learned so much from just the dishes that they would make every day.
Right.
We'd all cook for ourselves, but then in the beginning, that's how we started. We'd make our own dishes. But then eventually we would just end up cooking for each other. One person would make a big meal. We'd all share it together. I learned how to make some Trinidadian dishes, some Jordanian dishes, some Malaysian dishes, and we just shared different parts of our culture together.
That's amazing. Can you talk about a typical day at RCSI in the first year or in the first semester, say right from morning till the time you go to bed? Can you describe a typical day?
Yes. So most days at RCSI, they're pretty long. They start at 9 a.m. and end at 4 p.m. You get a good amount of breaks in the middle.
Okay.
But your day, it never goes past 4 p.m. It never starts earlier than 9, but it's always a 9 to 4 day. And in my first week, we started this module called Foundation for Practice 1. So it's basically like an introduction module to medicine, where a lot of the skills overlap with what you learn in IB, but it's just an intro to biochemistry, into pathology, just an intro to the different subjects that you will learn more, that you will focus on more throughout the next 2 years in RCSI. But you have different classes with smaller breaks in the middle. That's how it was mainly structured.
Okay. And how did you manage your, say, study hours and then university hours and then some extracurriculars or something just to relax?
Yes, so as I mentioned, during the first 2 weeks in RCSI, every evening there will be some kind of fresher event going on. So my typical day would be to wake up, I'd make breakfast for myself, then go to uni. Again, at that time, uni was a lot of fun. It was basically like socializing, getting to know everyone. All the classes were intro classes as well. One mistake I made was that when I came back at 4 p.m., I just took that as because I thought it was an intro class, I never really looked back on what I was learning in class. But I would come back, I would spend more time getting to know my roommates, and then we'd get ready together and go for the events at night. But that's not what I would do right now. I would emphasize on, from day one, focusing on just recapping what you've learned during the day when you're back. Even if you just take 1 hour to go through it, it would help a lot.
Okay. And in the first semester, how many theoretical subjects you had and how many, say, lab or clinical-based subjects that you had?
During my first semester, My course is broken down into different modules. So we
Right.
covered 2 modules throughout the entire semester. The first one was the Foundation for Practice 1.
Okay.
And then my second one was Body Movement and Function. So that was my
Okay.
musculoskeletal module. And within these modules, so specifically within Body Movement and Function, you have your case-based learning classes, you have your actual lectures, you have your anatomy labs where they teach you about the limbs.
Right.
But so that's how it was structured. Every 2 weeks there would be one assessment that would focus on everything that you've learned in the past 2 weeks, and then it was a cumulative assessment. So then after 2 weeks again, it would be everything that you learned in the last 4 weeks. So that's how the semester kept going in terms of testing your theoretical knowledge.
Okay.
Yes.
And how were the examinations conducted? How were you assessed every semester?
So like I said, the continuous assessments that we had, they were called knowledge checks. So every 2 weeks we'd have a knowledge check, which was just a multiple choice question, 20 question exam that we did online.
Okay.
But at the end of semester 1, we had 2 bigger assessments. So at the end of each module, you do one test called a progress test,
Okay.
That test is a 60-question exam. Again, multiple choice question. It's an online exam, but it also includes some questions from your 4 and 5, because the whole point of that assessment is it's trying to track your progress throughout your entire medical school journey.
Right.
So as you learn more, you attempt more of those questions, and then they're like mark boosters. But we also had an oral assessment called our CAP exam. And in that oral exam, it was an 8-minute exam where there would be 4 questions on Foundation for Practice 1 and 4 questions on Body Movement and Function. That it was just 1-to-1 with one professor and you.
Okay, and were those make or break deal? Like if you fail the oral exams, did you like not pass the semester?
No. So RCSI looks at passing in terms of you need to pass every module, and then you need to pass the year in general. With your GPA needs to be above a 2. So the oral assessment and the progress test, they do have a really big weightage on your GPA, much bigger than your smaller knowledge checks. But it's not the end of the world, because that's another good thing about RCSI. I feel like because they have so many different kinds of assessments, even aside from the knowledge-based assessments, all of our case-based learning sessions would also be graded. We'd have reflective assignments or papers that we'd have to write, which were all graded. So it was all small things that would add up.
Right.
So you can make up for not doing so well in a bigger exam by focusing on these smaller tests that are going on continuously as well.
And which was the most challenging subject in the first year for you?
I think for me, pathology was just very, very difficult to wrap my head around, because looking at scans, different kinds of stains that you use, looking at them, it was a lot to understand, I think.
The most common answer I get is anatomy.
Really? Anatomy was my favorite part.
Yeah?
It's my favorite subject in medicine.
So tell us the tips, how someone should prepare for anatomy. Like how did you simplify for yourself?
I think anatomy, because it's very hands-on, I would just, during my break times, I would go into the anatomy lab. What I like about RCSI is that they use actual cadavers, so you are working on an actual dead body in front of you, and it's not like you can only go in there during your specific class timing. It's open from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. every day, and there will always be some kind of professor who is in there. So I would just go in there, work around a bit, ask the professor some questions, work on my dissecting techniques, and I liked the fact that it was very hands-on. I was in control of what I was doing, so I found it a lot easier to remember things that way.
Now, if you compare your medical studies vis-a-vis the IB studies, already a lot of students complain about IB. I have to prepare for 6 subjects, extended essay, this, that. Now, can you give us a comparison like between IB studies and medical studies? How much is the difference?
Personally, I found medical school to be a lot more strenuous compared to IB, because even though IB does focus on 6 different subjects, I think the content of each subject is so little in IB, but in medical school, it's a lot to keep up with. And I think unless you're really reviewing things every single day and you're keeping up with things every single day, it's really easy to fall behind on content. And then it's kind of like a rat's race. You're focusing on catching up on content, but then more content passes by as you're catching up on it. So
Right.
I know that's something I struggled with. It's something that a lot of my friends struggled with as well, coming straight out of high school.
Right. That's a very helpful advice. Now, someone who has finished the school now and they're having summer holidays, they think now it's the time to, be with family or travel. But would you advise them that they should prepare something, study something during these 2 months before they join the medical school so that their first semester becomes a little bit easier for them?
Actually, no, I don't think
No?
so. Because burnout is something that is faced again by medical students so much in medical school that I really think that once you start medical school, you very rarely get a chance to take a break.
Right.
So that 2-month period between when high school ends and when your college starts
Yeah.
should really be a good break for you. Otherwise, it becomes very, very stressful.
Okay.
Another thing is, I think they understand that you're coming here for the first time. Like the university understands, the professors understand. So it's designed, at least for RCSI, it was designed in a way that if you put in work, a little bit of work every day from your first day there, you will be perfectly fine.
Okay.
It's the students who push everything to the weekend and then, or they'll push everything to cram around the exam time. They are the ones who start to face issues with workload.
So somebody who has taken, say, HL Bio or HL Chem or even, say, A-level Bio and Chemistry, you think that's sufficient for them to start the first semester of the med school? They will have enough bandwidth to sort of cope up with the first semester?
Yes. So the first module, the Foundation for Practice 1, it was an intro module that we did, and it focused on a lot of the things that we learned in IB in biology and chemistry, but a little more advanced version.
Got it.
But again, I think people who pursue medicine, they all do so many different subjects in high school and come. So the professors treat every lesson as if you've never learned anything about it before. And they will, at least in the first 2 weeks, they will teach you everything to do with that subject again.
Right. You mentioned about core memory. You formed a core memory when you got the offer letter from RCSI. Did you form any core memory in these 2 years? Did you have like the most funniest moment or like wow moment during the university life which you would like to share?
I think my friend group that I made in my first year, I would say just spending the entire year with them was such a happy experience because we were all from different parts of the world. We all were kind of struggling at the same time, but then when we do our exams, we'd get our results, we'd celebrate together. And then one special thing about it is that every time it was someone's birthday, we'd always make like an effort to, at midnight, get a cake for them. Even though it started to get very repetitive towards the end, we'd do the same thing. We'd celebrate each of our birthdays together. That was another thing I actually found a bit difficult to not get, or to get adjusted to, was that spending your birthday away from your family.
Right.
It was a bit difficult to wrap my head around. But we'd make sure to just make each other feel at home as well.
So they are now your family.
Yes.
Right. So that's very important to have some close friends in the uni with whom you can talk openly and share your problems. That's very important. Nowadays there is a lot of advancement is happening in technology. Do you see any changes in the way the university is delivering its curriculum to the students?
Yes, so one thing about RCSI is that they have a simulation lab where you have different mannequins that are very, very high tech and have been designed to mimic different patient scenarios that would otherwise be unethical to have an actual patient come in and to have students working on them. So things like pregnancy, so simulating a woman giving birth to a child, or another patient scenario that's been there is that a patient who's been driving a tractor and has driven it into a tree and half their leg has been chopped off. Situations like this, they're difficult to mimic with actual patients, so they have mannequins. And the mannequins are extremely high tech. They've been wired they can talk to you.
Oh, wow.
If you touch them in a weird way, they scream in pain. They have different parts that will inflate to mimic different conditions. So they've been wired down to the specific veins and pathways in the body as well. They're very specific and high tech.
Right. So this kind of exposure before, it used to be given to, during the clinical years.
Yes.
But now you are getting this in the first 2 years itself.
Yes. So right now, I'm in my second year and I've only been focusing on theory. I haven't had any contact with with actual patients in the clinic yet. But all my studying is done through mock patients or these mannequins.
Okay. RCSI has two programs, like the 5-year medicine program and the 6-year medicine program. Could you talk about the differences between them, number one? Number two, since you are in the 5-year program, can you talk about how the 5-year looks like?
Yes. So the 6-year program, they have one extra year in the beginning, which is called their foundation year, where they just learn skills to do with biology, chemistry, and physics. It's advanced skills. To be honest, after they're done with the foundation year, they join the next batch of the 5-year program students. So a lot of my friends are friends who completed their foundation year 1 year before I came to RCSI.
Right.
I think that they seemed a lot more prepared for uni life. I think because they have that added advantage of they've already spent a year experiencing what it feels like to be out of uni and out of high school. And I also think that they were a lot more prepared in terms of their knowledge on biology, chemistry, and physics compared to we were. But at the end, we then come and join together at the start. So my first year was their second year, basically. My 5-year program, the first 2 years are our theory years, and then the last 3 years are our clinical years. So the whole concept is that we broke up the first 2 years in terms of the different body systems that are there. So your cardiovascular, respiratory, neurology. It's broken up to different body systems that you focus on throughout the duration of the first 2 years. And then once you've learned your knowledge, you apply that when you go for rotations in your clinical years in the hospital. We also have, every semester, we have one module called Student Choice, where we spend a week learning about, there's a huge list of different topics, and it's up to you. You pick something you're interested in, and you explore that for 1 week. So I've done, for one of my Student Choice modules, I explored global surgery. For another one, I did it on surgical cinema. So it was just watching different surgeries being done. And for one, I can't remember it was global surgery and surgical cinema. Those were my two ones.
Okay.
Yes.
My next question is pertaining to studies and social life. So firstly, how long do you study in the university during the regular days and during the examination days? That is one. Second, how do you de-stress yourself and how important is that?
Okay. So right now, I would say that whatever I learn during the day, I try to come home and just look over it at least once as much as possible. I personally use a flashcard method to study. So I use the flashcard app Anki, which it's very common amongst medical students. In fact, if high school students can gain experience using this app before you come, that would be amazing.
So it's Anki, yeah?
Anki, A-N-K-I.
Okay.
You can either make your own flashcard decks or you find flashcard decks online as well. And just learning how to use it, there's different ways. It takes a bit of time getting used to, but once you figure it out, it's so helpful. It's so good for just consistently recalling and memorizing information. But I try to do my Anki decks for whatever I've learned during the day.
Okay.
That's just my regular time when it's non-exam season.
During
exam season, it's just I spend my entire day in the library from the morning to the night, just continuously reviewing every single thing again and again until the exam.
And at a stretch, how many minutes or hours you study and how long break you take in between?
I stay in the library right before exam season. I will stay in the library from the time I wake up, I'll get ready, go to uni. I'll stay there until I start to feel hungry for dinner.
Wow.
The uni provides us with a lot of food options as well. They cook fresh. They have a fresh kitchen, dining hall that they cook every day. So that's my main area for lunch. But I take short breaks every hour and a half, 2 hours or so to just go walk around the place, drink water, talk to my friends. But then I'll go back into the library and continue working until dinner time.
And how do you de-stress yourself? Talk about the social life, what you do beyond studies in Ireland or in Dublin specifically. Yeah.
I think Dublin, the good thing about it is it's a very small city.
Right.
So there's a lot of walking, there's a lot of nature. And Another thing is RCSI has a lot of different clubs and societies that you're bound to find something that you're interested in. I grew a really strong passion for cooking in my first 2 years of RCSI.
Good for you.
Thank you. So there's a gourmet society there, so I attended a lot of their events. They'd have small things like cupcake decoration, or just like they'll have different bake sales. That's what I would do during my like day at uni. So these are all events that go on in uni simultaneously every single day. But then there's a lot of things to do at nights as well. There's pubs are there. There's a lot of parks. My friends and I, there's a very good student body there, and all the years, despite if I'm in my second year, I'm still very well connected with people that are in upper years or lower years as well. So we all tend to go out together. Yeah.
That's interesting, and that's so needed for med students, right?
Yeah.
Because if your cooking skills, do you have extra pressure from your roomies to cook?
No. Another thing is so my current roomies that I live with, we decided to just cook our own meals for ourselves because I think a lot of students they get overwhelmed by is that when you move in with your friends, it gets a bit difficult to like set boundaries between you and your friends in terms of extra pressure being put on you because of them, or maybe someone's not clean enough, someone has a different type of eating pattern, they don't eat certain things. It becomes very difficult to
So they all cook for themselves.
So we all just cook for ourselves. Maybe at some point if someone's making a dish that I would also like, I tell them, just make like one extra portion for me. But most of the time, most nights it's just on our own.
Right. And now what's your plan after graduating from med school? I know you still have 3 years to go, but have you thought about, what do you want to do after this?
Yes. Right now, I'm very interested in getting into the field of gynecology.
Okay.
I got experience through, I was on the committee of my uni's Women's Wellness Society, and we host this event in uni every year called the Women's Wellness Symposium. And I got the chance to be on the organizing committee of that event. So that really gave me exposure into just gynecology as a field itself. So that's what I'm exploring right now.
Fantastic. And I wish you the very best. I'm sure you'll become a great gynecologist.
Thank you so much.
I already see that you are so sorted, sort of so committed, and disciplined as well in your, in your approach. So I wish you the very best. Before we conclude the podcast, I want to ask your suggestions or advice to high school students who want to get into med school. Can you give them the most 2 or 3 important tips that will help them to get into med school?
I think just focus on getting any kind of experience like shadowing or volunteering or research if you can, just something to make you stand out, but explore your interest still. Also, fix your learning style. That's something that you try to learn. Every student has a different way of learning different information. What works for you best may not work for someone else, but it's important that you figure out your own learning style. And then finally, just don't take a lot of stress. I think there's already enough stress in medical school. Try to enjoy your time, relax, focus on your hobbies.
As a high school students, what are the qualities which are needed to become a good doctor or to become a good medical student? How do I validate myself? Okay, I have these qualities and this is something needed for medicine.
I think the main thing is your ability to feel empathy. Like you're dealing with someone's life over here. It's a really important thing for you to just be able to give yourself your attention to this patient, really feel what they're feeling so you can actually emphasize on the burden of what they're experiencing. Empathy is one of the.
So empathy is the most important quality. Fantastic. Yes. That's a great note to end the show on. Thank you so much, Geetika, for all the insights that you've given and sharing your experience so openly. I'm sure the listeners, especially the high school students and parents who are listening to this, they'll feel inspired by your journey. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.